Okay. So we talked about in the quadrilateral family, we have 3 subfamilies. We have the kite family, we have the parallelogram family, and we have the trapezoid family. The kite family only has 1 member. Parallelogram family has a few members. Trapezoid family has 2 members. So the first thing that you're going to do anytime you have a problem like this is you need to determine which family the figure falls in. Is it a trapezoid, is it a parallelogram, or is it a kite? There are 2 main ways to do this. What is one huge difference between the 3? So let's look at the markings. This is the first one I'm talking about. Trapezoid has what? 1 pair of parallel sides. Parallelogram has 2 pairs of parallel sides. Kite has no parallel sides. Okay, if I'm looking for parallel, what is that going to use? Slope, right? So the first way that you could start the problem is do the slope of all 4 sides. If I have 1 pair of parallel sides, where does my figure fall? Trapezoid family. If I have 2 pairs of parallel sides? Parallelogram. If I have no parallel sides? Is it definitely a kite?
No.
Could be, but it's not definitely. So that's one main difference. What is the other huge difference between the 3 families? Besides the parallel sides? Congruent sides, right? How many congruent sides does a trapezoid have? 2 pairs, right? But they're not opposites. They're the 2 that are next to each other. Parallelogram, opposite sides are congruent. Trapezoid? None or 1 pair, right? The legs. Okay, so you're going to have to either start with slope or distance formula. We're going to do both. Is that okay?
Yeah.
Okay. So here's the first example that you have. It says, give the most specific name for the following quadrilaterals. Write a sentence explaining your answer. So right now what I would like you to do is please plot the figure. Sophia? Yes, which one should be G? This one? The one that I wrote is F? Thank you. Okay. Now, I know that I can't just judge the figure based off of what it looks like, but if we had to guess, what family do you think it falls in?
Parallelogram.
Probably the parallelogram family. Okay, do we want to start with slope or distance formula?
Distance.
I personally want to start with slope, so I don't know why I asked, because we're just going to start with slope. So, we're going to find the slope of DG, and then what is the side that's opposite to DG?
GF.
DG and EF. Okay, so DG, I have y minus y, so 3 minus 7 over x minus x, negative 7 minus negative 4. 3 minus 7 is negative 4. Negative 7 minus negative 4, it's like an adding, that's negative 3. So I get 4 over 3. For EF, y minus y, so 3 minus 7 for x minus x, negative 2 minus 1, so negative 4 over negative 3, so 4/3. So next to that, I'm going to write that I have 1 pair of parallel sides. Okay, so now I have to do GF, and I have to do DE. For GF, I have y minus y, so 7 minus 7 over x minus x, 1 minus negative 4. So I get 0 over 5. What is 0 divided by 5? 0. For DE, I have 3 minus 3 over negative 7 minus negative 2. This gives us 0 over negative 5. What's 0 divided by negative 5?
0.
0. Okay, some of us get tripped up here because it's positive 5 and negative 5. That's okay. They both simplify the same. So this tells us same slope. We have a second pair of parallel sides. Okay, so I'm going to mark that on my figure. One pair of parallel sides, second pair of parallel sides. At this point, we can determine which family our figure falls into. What family does it fall into? Parallelogram. Okay, so over here, I'm going to say it's a parallelogram. And then in parentheses, two pairs of parallel sides. So once we're in the parallelogram family, we have three options: a rectangle, a rhombus, or a square. Do these slopes give me any other information? Like it's definitely this figure or it's definitely not this figure? It's not a rhombus? It's not a square? It's not a rectangle? So we have a whole bunch of different options. Which one is it? Dorota?
It's not a rectangle because it doesn't have 4 right angles.
Yeah, rectangle has 4 right angles, right? How could Dorota tell from this information that we don't have right angles? Nick?
They're not perpendicular.
Not perpendicular. Do you remember how the slopes would have to be opposite reciprocals? Are they? No. So, from this information, we can also say it's not a rectangle. And then in parentheses, we're going to say that the sides are not perpendicular. Okay, if it's not a rectangle, what else is true?
It's not a square.
Not a square. What is our only option that's left?
Rhombus.
Rhombus. Is it definitely a rhombus?
Yes.
It could just be a parallelogram.
Could just be a plain old parallelogram. So right now we need to determine, is this a rhombus? Okay, so what is one special property of a rhombus that we could prove based on this figure? We could prove four congruent sides. What else could we prove? Diagonals are perpendicular. I kind of like that one, so let's do that one. So I want to know, are the diagonals perpendicular? Would it be wrong to see if there were 4 congruent sides instead?
No.
No, it's just a different way of doing it. So the first diagonal is GE, and then the second diagonal is DF. To see if they're perpendicular, I have to do their slopes. So for GE, I get 3 minus 7 over negative 2 minus negative 4. 3 minus 7 is negative 4. Negative 2 minus negative 4, it's like an adding, so I get positive 2. So that ends up being a slope of negative 2. DF, I get 3 minus 7 over negative 7 minus 1. So this ends up being negative 4 over negative 8, which is 1/2. Are you guys okay with slope, or am I going too fast? I'm okay? Okay, what information did this give us? Opposite reciprocals. So, is this a rhombus?
Yeah.
Okay. Are there any other possibilities for what this figure could be? Nope. So, last thing we have to do is write a sentence. So, we're going to say DEFG is a rhombus. Because first thing we showed is that the opposite sides were parallel. Okay, so opposite sides parallel showed us what? Parallelogram. Then we said there were no, or the sides are not right. Okay, I'm going to say sides are not perpendicular. Sides are not perpendicular. What did that tell us? Not a rectangle, not a square. like it's moving in slow motion. And lastly, the diagonals were perpendicular. And that showed us that it was a rhombus.
If you didn't write about how it's not a rectangle, will we get one something?
I need indication somewhere why it's not a rectangle. So if you didn't put it in your sentence, but you wrote this, that's fine. Okay, so do you guys see the process of going through? You have to ask yourself, is it this figure, yes or no? Is it this figure, yes or no? If I'm not sure, what else I can do to investigate? Kind of.
Do we have to say why it's not a trapezoid or a kite?
Because we said it's a parallelogram, I'll just know that it's not a trapezoid. Okay. I told you that you could do this with distance formula also. We're going to do one more with slope and then do distance formula. So right now for number 2, plot the figure, find the slopes of all 4 sides. Find the slope of all 4 sides of this. You have to show the work. Like I did previously.
Right.
What does that say? 3 over squiggle?
I do it differently. I just count the boxes. I don't do the equation.
You have to do the equation. I told you that before. The last time we did this. And I just went through and I did 4 slopes using the equation. And you learned the slope equation in middle school?
Yeah.
Yeah, I know. Those don't match, so something is wrong. You recognize that?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, Nick, pay attention. AD, y minus y. So -1 minus -7 over x minus x, -7 minus -4. That's like adding, so that's 6 over, that's like adding -3, -2. Is that right? AD
Yeah.
-2?
Yeah.
Okay, BC,
4 over -7.
you guys agree? Yeah?
Yeah.
Damien, CD,
CD, I got 1 over 2.
1/2. Abby, AP, 1/2.
I got a different answer. I got 2/3 for AB.
I got
AB moves twice.
How many people got -2 for AD? Raise your hand. Okay, I believe that one. How many people got -4/7 for BC? How many people got 1/2 for CD? How many people got 1/2 for CD? I mean AB. Okay, most of you raised your hand, so I'm gonna believe all those slopes are correct. In general, did we get the majority of them right? You might have made a simple computation error. Okay, so we have one pair of parallel sides. What did this information tell us? It's definitely a trapezoid. Is there anything else it could be? It could be an isosceles trapezoid. So we know it's definitely definitely a trapezoid. We want to know, is it an isosceles trapezoid? 2 things that we could use to show that this is an isosceles trapezoid. At least that we could show on a graph like this. The legs are congruent. That's what makes it isosceles. Or diagonals are congruent. If I show the legs congruent, what formula am I going to have to use? Distance. How many times? How many legs are there? 2, so twice. If I show the diagonals congruent, how many times am I going to have to do the distance formula? Twice. So do we see that there's really not a quick way to do it, or a quicker way? They're going to be the same way. Okay, let's check the legs. I know that DC and AB are parallel. Those are not the legs then. So you right now have to find the length of AD, and you have to find the length of BC. If you have the distance formula on your calculator, you can use your calculator. I'm going to do it by hand for those of you who don't have it. Can somebody verify my two legs?
I got 65.
65 for which one?
BC.
BC. Is my 45 right?
Yeah.
Okay. So 7 squared is 49. Oh, 49 and 16 is 65. Yeah, you guys are right. Thank you. Okay, what did this tell us?
There's not congruent legs.
Not congruent legs, so it's not isosceles. Could it be?
No.
No, definitely not. Okay, so for this one, we're going to write ABCD is a trapezoid because only one pair of sides is parallel, but the legs are not congruent. So I'm going to put in parentheses, that tells us that it's not isosceles. Okay, do you see how organized my work is? I expect your work to be the same. It's really hard for me to follow if you just have random numbers and work written everywhere. You need to have things labeled. Questions on this one? No? Okay, moving on. So that was the first way to approach the problem. And that was to do the slope 4 times. What was the other way that I said you could approach the problem? Starting with the distance, right? So graph this one again, please. Well, not again. I guess you never graphed it to begin with. But that's okay. Just do your best. When you are done with that, start finding the distances, please. Don't just blindly write down what I have up here because I just made a mistake, so on the previous problem. I forgot to ask, what do we think this family, what family do we think this figure is going to be in?
Parallelogram.
Probably parallelogram. First of all, did anybody get the same measurements I did? All of mine are right?
Yeah.
Oh, good. Okay. So, AB is root 20, and CD is also root 20. BC is root 45, and AD is root 45. Based on those markings and on these numbers, which family does this fall into?
Parallelogram.
Parallelogram. Okay, so you're going to write that. It's a parallelogram. Why?
Because opposite sides are congruent.
Opposite sides are congruent. Okay. Do these 4 measurements give us any other information?
Yeah.
What else?
That it can't be square.
definitely not a square. Why not?
Because they're not all four sides are congruent
Okay, doesn't have four sides that are congruent, so it's not a square
or round.
or a rhombus. Colleen, is that what you were going to say?
Yes.
Okay. Is there any other option for what this figure is? Rectangle. Does it have to be a rectangle?
No.
No. Could be. Doesn't have to be. Okay. How could we show if this is, or how could we investigate whether or not it's a rectangle? Okay, so the first way is that the sides would be perpendicular. That's going to involve what? Slope? 4 times. Or we could show the diagonals are what? Congruent. What's that going to involve?
2 times
The midpoint.
the distance.
The distance. Okay, do you want to do slope 4 times or the distance formula twice? Distance formula twice. So right now, find AC and BD. Once you have them, please let me know what they are. They're both root 65? Okay, so root 65, root 65. What does that tell us? It's definitely a rectangle. Is there any more specific name we can give it? Nope. Okay, so for this one, ABCD is a rectangle because what's the first thing we found out? Opposite sides are congruent. And what did that tell us? So that told us that it was a parallelogram. Then what else did we decide? Not a square or a rhombus because not all 4 sides are congruent. So I'm going to say not all 4 sides are congruent. And then in parentheses, that's going to mean it's not a rhombus or a square. And then the last thing we found out, diagonals are congruent. And that told us that it was a rectangle. How do we feel about this idea?
Good.
It's not too bad. Do you all have a preference as to which way you like better, to start with the slope or with the distance formula? I don't care either way. If you don't have the distance formula on your calculator, my guess would be that this is not your favorite way to start. Do you want to do this by hand? Probably not. If you don't have the distance formula on your calculator, I would probably suggest that you start with slope. But I don't care which way you start. Do we have any questions? There's one more example. We only have 10 more minutes though left in class. So here's what I'm thinking. Your homework tonight